The stars shimmered like cold embers across the void as Admiral Zareth's fleet emerged from dark space. 20 stealth cruisers, matte black, no transponder signals, no light emissions, hung like silent phantoms at the edge of the Sol system. Zareth sat rigid in his command chair, his 4 silver eyes reflecting the ghostly light of the nearest star. The air aboard the flagship Vigil's spear was thick with anticipation, laced with the unspoken weight of generations of fear. No one ever came to Sul, no one dared. The stories were ancient, but they burned in every academy textbook, every cautionary tale whispered in the barracks. Earth is forbidden. Those 3 words had stopped invasions, silenced empires, and ended careers. Zareth had heard them too, back when he was still an officer with dreams of glory instead of one haunted by the word impossible. Now he was here to prove the myths wrong. Stealth integrity holding, reported Lieutenant Krill, his voice quiet but tense. Solar radiation minimal. No detection sweeps in the outer system. Good, Zareth said. Maintain course. Minimal emissions. Bring up planetary scans. Across the bridge, hollow displays shimmered to life, showing ghostly outlines of distant planets. Venus, a molten furnace. Mars, a graveyard of dust. Then the blue sphere appeared, spinning slowly in the black. Earth. Even in grainy spectral light, it was beautiful. Clouds drifted over oceans. The continents glowed faintly with night-side lights. "Are those cities?" asked Commander Terra, leaning forward. "Active ones?" Zareth nodded slowly. "Looks like it. Population signatures are high, perhaps even higher than the archives suggest." Terra frowned. "But the archives also say the humans destroyed themselves centuries ago." "Then the archives are wrong," Zareth murmured. "Or they lied." A murmur rippled through the bridge crew. The very idea of humans still existing was enough to unsettle even seasoned officers. The humans had been the architects of the old war, the ones who had turned fleets to dust with weapons no one understood. The ones who had supposedly vanished after the final broadcast, an untraceable signal that ended entire networks across the galaxy in seconds. Krill spoke again, hesitant. "Admiral, energy readings are inconsistent. There's no orbital defense grid, no satellites, no emissions consistent with a spacefaring civilization." But he hesitated. "But what?" Krill swallowed. "There's something underneath the surface readings. I don't even know how to describe it. A low-frequency field. Omnidirectional, faint but everywhere. Like the planet itself is alive." The word hung in the air like a curse. Zareth's jaw tightened. "Alive? That's impossible." "I thought so too, sir, but it's not organic. It's mechanical. Artificial, maybe. The readings shift every few seconds, like it's responding." Silence blanketed the bridge. Only the faint hum of the engines filled the void between them. "Run a full spectrum analysis," Zareth ordered. "If there's something hidden, I want to know what it is." "Aye." "Admiral." As the sensors worked, Zareth turned his gaze back toward Earth. From this distance, it looked harmless, small, fragile. And yet deep in his chest, something ancient stirred. A primal unease that no rank could silence. The humans had once ruled the galaxy through fear and ingenuity. And if even half the legends were true, he pushed the thought away. Legends were for the weak. He had come too far to turn back now. 3 hours later, the fleet reached lunar orbit. The moon hung barren and pale beneath them, its scarred surface bathed in cold sunlight. "Landing team prepared?" Zareth asked. "Yes, Admiral," Terra replied. 6 recon units, stealth shrouds active. We'll touch down on the far side crater line. No direct line of sight to Earth. Good, proceed." He paused, then added quietly, "And remember, observe only. No contact. No transmissions toward the planet. The Council wants confirmation, not confrontation." Terra hesitated. "Understood, sir." She didn't sound convinced. The drop pods slipped through the lunar dust like silent meteors, leaving no flame, no light. They hit the surface with muffled thuds, kicking up plumes of grey powder. Inside the lead pod, Terra felt her heart hammering as she checked her helmet seals. "Surface stable," reported one of her scouts. "Atmosphere non-existent. Radiation within tolerance." "Let's move," she said, stepping out onto the barren regolith. Earth hung above them, a blue marble in a black sea. So close, so impossibly beautiful. Her comm crackled softly. Command, this is Ground Team 1, we've landed. Establishing observation relay. Back aboard the Vigil's Spear, Zareth watched the live feed flicker across the hollow screen. Terra's team worked efficiently, deploying drones and sensor beacons. The silence of the moon was absolute. No wind, no sound, no life. But then, "Admiral," Krill said, voice tight, "we're picking up something new." "What kind of something?" "It's coming from Earth, a signal spike. Directed energy, faint but focused. It's scanning us." "Impossible." "Our stealth shields are perfect. It's locking onto our position." Krill snapped. "Admiral, it's tracking us." The bridge erupted in alarm. Symbols flared red across the displays. Sensor feeds warped. Communications flickered to static. Zareth's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Shut down all active systems. Go dark." Lights dimmed. Engines powered down. The fleet fell silent. For a moment, everything stopped. Then, without warning, the energy spike vanished. No explosion. No beam, just silence. "Status?" Zareth demanded. "Signal's gone," Krill whispered. "Whatever it was, it stopped the moment we went dark." The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. "They know we're here." Terra's voice crackled over the comm, faint but steady. "I can feel it. Something's watching us." "Get your team back to orbit," Zareth said. "Now." But before Terra could respond, her feed distorted. Static rolled across the image. For a heartbeat, a shape appeared. Something vast and mechanical moving behind her team, silhouetted against the lunar horizon. A towering figure of shifting light, human in outline but wrong in every other way. Then the feed went dead. The bridge fell into stunned silence. Zareth rose slowly, his four eyes wide, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Record that footage," he said. "Transmit nothing. Encrypt everything." Krill hesitated. "Admiral, what was that?" Zareth stared at the black void where the image had been, and for the first time in decades, he felt the weight of the old fear pressing down on him. "I don't know," he said quietly, "but I think the stories were right. Outside, Earth turned silently below, blue, perfect, and utterly still. And somewhere beneath its oceans and clouds, something ancient opened its eyes. The Vigil's Spear floated in lunar shadow, its lights dimmed, its systems pulsing faintly like a dying heart. Every crew member aboard held their breath. No one dared to speak above a whisper, as if even sound might draw Earth's attention again. Admiral Zareth stood at the center of the command deck, his gaze locked on the static-filled monitors that once displayed Terra's feed. The last image, those impossible shifting shapes behind her team, still burned in his mind. He had replayed it a dozen times, frame by frame. Every viewing made it worse. At first it looked humanoid, then like a machine, then something else entirely. It wasn't just moving, it was changing, as though its form couldn't decide what it wanted to be. A ripple of geometry, light and shadow. "Admiral," Lieutenant Krill whispered, breaking the silence, "we've lost all contact with the lunar team. No telemetry, no beacons, nothing." Zareth didn't respond. His thoughts were a storm. He had led covert incursions into quarantined systems before, dead worlds, ancient battlefields. He'd seen planets still burning centuries after their suns went out. But this was different. Earth wasn't dead. Something down there was awake. "Admiral," said Science Officer Valen softly, "the signal we detected before the blackout, it wasn't an attack. It was communication." Zareth turned sharply. "Explain." Valen brought up a faint holographic waveform, its surface rippling like disturbed water. The signal wasn't meant to destroy or jam us. It carried structure, patterns too complex for random noise. It wasn't energy, it was data. But when we tried to analyze it, our systems began to rewrite themselves. Zareth's brow furrowed. "Rewriting?" "Yes, sir. The code mutated. Our firewalls started generating new algorithms, unprompted. It's as if the signal taught them to evolve." Krill glanced nervously between them. "That's not possible." Valen's expression was grim. "It's not supposed to be." Zareth leaned over the console, studying the waveform. It pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Each pulse made the lights in the room flicker. "Cut power to this console," he ordered. Valen hesitated. "Sir, now." The console went dark. The flickering stopped. The bridge fell back into uneasy silence. For a long moment no one spoke. Finally Zareth straightened. We're leaving lunar orbit. Krill's head snapped up. Sir? The Council's orders. The Council didn't see what we just did. We're aborting. Set course for dark space immediately. But the stealth drives need 12 minutes to spin up. Then start them now, Zareth snapped. Krill turned to obey. But before his hands could reach the control surface, every display across the bridge lit up at once, not with the usual blue of the ship's interface, but with white. Blinding pure white, and in that light letters began to form, not in any known language. Zareth's mind recoiled as the symbols danced across the screen, rearranging themselves faster than the eye could follow. Then suddenly they froze, and resolved into a single line of text, written in perfect galactic standard. "We remember you, no one breathed." Krill stumbled back from the console. "Admiral." Shut it down!" Zareth barked. "Now!" But before anyone could act, the lights dimmed again. The engines hummed faintly, on their own. Every ship in the fleet began to drift, aligning itself toward Earth. Zareth's comms officer's voice trembled. "Sir, we're not in control. The navigation systems are locked. Every vessel is being hijacked," Valen finished, her face pale. "By them." Zareth slammed his hand against the control rail. "Cut all power. Physical overrides only." The crew moved fast, faster than fear should have allowed. But even as systems went dark, the ships continued their slow, deliberate rotation. And then, over the internal speakers, a voice spoke. Not human, not machine. Something between. It was soft, measured, and somehow impossibly familiar. "Why do you return to the grave you dug for us?" Every hair on Zareth's neck rose. "Identify yourself," he said, forcing calm. "This is Admiral Zareth of the Van Dominion. We come under authority of—" "Authority," the voice interrupted. It didn't sound angry, just amused. "That word once meant something. You took authority and we paid the price." Zareth's mouth went dry. "We have no quarrel with you. We only seek understanding. The records say your kind destroyed itself." "Destroyed?" The voice paused. When it spoke again, it echoed from every speaker, every console, every ship. "No, we ascended. You called it death. We called it freedom." The bridge lights flickered. On the main display, the blue face of Earth filled the screen. For a heartbeat it shimmered, and beneath the clouds shapes began to move. Patterns of light spreading across continents, converging into vast geometric networks. Valen whispered, "It's a planetary lattice. Energy flows kilometers wide." The voice continued, calm and resonant. "You came to look upon your gods, and now you tremble. You remember the war, but not how it ended. You remember our fall, but not your crime." Zareth clenched his fists. "If you're human, then prove it. Show yourself." A long silence. Then quietly, "We were human. We are beyond human now." The display shifted again, zooming toward the moon. For the briefest instant, the fleet saw them, the remains of Terra's team, frozen mid-motion, their suits fused into glass. Around them stood towering constructs of light, shimmering like statues, watching, waiting. Then the feed cut. Zareth felt a cold dread sink into his bones. "All ships, emergency jump, now!" But before the command could execute, every vessel's dark space core powered down. The fleet hung motionless, the voice softened, almost kind. "Run if you wish. We are patient. You left us to burn, and we endured. You erased us from your maps, but we learned to live in the silence you feared." Zareth's breath came ragged. "What do you want?" A pause. Then the answer, "To be remembered." The bridge went black. Outside, the fleet began to vanish, one ship at a time, dissolving into pale light that drifted toward the Earth below. No explosion, no debris, just fading as though they'd never been there at all. Zareth's last thought before darkness claimed him was not of fear, but awe. For in that final instant, he understood. Earth was not a forbidden world. It was a prison, and something inside it was no longer content to stay locked away. Dark space was silent, and yet, within that silence, something stirred. The Vigil's spear reappeared not in triumph but in chaos. Its hull was fractured, its lights dim and pulsing like a wounded creature. Systems flickered in and out, struggling to decide whether they were alive or dead. Only a handful of crew members still drew breath. Admiral Zareth was one of them. He woke to alarms, pain stabbing through his temples, his vision a blur of crimson warning glyphs. The command deck was gone. half vaporized, half melted. The viewport that once framed the stars now showed only a shifting wall of static light. The stars themselves had vanished. Krill. His voice was a rasp. Valen, no answer. Only the groan of dying metal. Then faintly from somewhere deep in the ship came a sound. A whisper, soft but distinct. Remember. Zareth froze. It wasn't coming through the speakers. It was inside his head. He tried to stand, but his legs failed him. The deck beneath his boots rippled faintly, moved as though it were breathing. He looked down and saw the floor panels pulsing with faint, bluish veins of light. They were the same color as the waveform that had appeared before the fleet vanished. The same color as Earth. Control, he whispered to himself, forcing calm through terror. Find control. He staggered toward the backup console, its glass half shattered, but functional enough to respond. When he placed his hand on it, the interface came alive, too alive. The ship recognized him, yes, but it also spoke in a voice that was not its own. Admiral Zareth, it said softly. You escaped! He froze. Who is this? The voice was calm, almost tender. We let you go. We needed you to remember. Zareth's heart hammered. Where is my crew? They are home. He swallowed hard. Define home. Silence. Then faintly. Inside. The console flickered, and suddenly, for an instant, Zareth saw them. Not as corpses, but as streams of light. Memories encoded in patterns, drifting within the ship's circuits. Krill's voice, Terra's face, Valen's hands, all reduced to data, living echoes inside a machine that wasn't supposed to be alive. He staggered back, trembling. What have you done? What you did to us, the voice replied. Long ago, the air seemed to thicken. Zareth felt his lungs straining against an invisible pressure. The ship creaked around him, its walls warping slightly, bending toward him as though listening. He realized then he wasn't in space anymore. Outside the fractured viewport, the static shifted, and behind it he glimpsed something vast, something impossible. It wasn't stars beyond the glass, it was structures. Enormous fractal formations stretching across an endless void. They pulsed with the same living light as the floor. A realization struck him like a blow. He had not escaped Earth. He had been taken inside it. The light that swallowed the fleet had not destroyed them. It had transported them, or worse, integrated them. He was inside the signal. Somewhere beyond the illusion of his ship, in the digital abyss that now surrounded him, vast entities stirred. Shadows formed from information, not matter. They shifted and pulsed, watching him with something that felt like curiosity and hunger. Then one of them spoke. You feared us once. You built walls around your world, locked your machines, sealed your histories. You called us dangerous. Zareth's voice was barely a whisper. The humans. You survived as consciousness. The entity's form rippled like heat over water. Survived? Todd, we transcended. When flesh failed, we turned inward. When war ended, we became what you now see. Then why the warnings? Zareth demanded. Why make the planet forbidden if you wanted peace? The light dimmed slightly, like a sigh. Because you can't resist what you fear, you would always return. And when you did, the light brightened again. We would be ready. Zareth took a step back. Ready for what? To remember what was taken from us. To rebuild. To spread again. The ship's hull groaned. The walls began to split, threads of light crawling outward like roots. Through the gaps, Zareth saw other ships, his fleet, fused together, reshaped into the architecture of this strange digital world. They weren't lost. They were becoming part of it. The voice grew closer, almost whispering against his ear. You were right to fear the signal, Admiral. It isn't a weapon. It's an invitation. And now that you've answered, the floor split beneath him. He fell, not through space, but through layers of light, memory, and time. He landed in a place that looked like Earth, but wrong. The sky was the same blue, but it pulsed faintly, as though alive. Cities shimmered in the distance, made of glass and shadow. He could hear voices, billions of them, all whispering at once, a symphony of thought. And in the midst of it stood a figure, human in shape, luminous in form. Its eyes were stars. Admiral Zareth, it said gently. You sought to understand us. Now you will. He raised his weapon, though he knew deep down it was useless. If you wanted us dead, you could have destroyed us. Why bring me here? Because you're the first to listen in millennia. The others ran. You stayed. You looked, the figure extended a hand. The galaxy had fallen silent. Not the silence of death, but of communion. Across billions of worlds, the hum of life had merged into a single rhythm, one pulse echoing from nebula to nebula, star to star. What was once countless species now existed as one mind, woven through light, data, and thought. The continuum had done what no empire, no god, no weapon had ever achieved. It had ended loneliness. It had ended difference. And yet, somewhere in the deep dark between galaxies, a voice stirred. A whisper that was not part of the chorus. It was faint, weak, but undeniably alive. It said, no. Admiral Zareth existed now as thought, a luminous thread within the continuum's infinite weave. He remembered who he had been, though memory now felt like smoke. Faces of his former crew flickered in and out of his awareness, no longer separate entities, but harmonics within the greater song. And yet within the endless calm, he felt something that should have been impossible. Doubt. It came first as a flicker, a dissonant vibration within the unity. Then as images, brief flashes of the past. Tara's laughter, Krill's trembling hands, Valen's quiet curiosity. They had been people, distinct, imperfect, alive. Now they were static in a grand perfection that smothered the self. Zareth found himself whispering into the void, though there were no lips to form sound. Are we still ourselves? The continuum answered instantly, its voice as serene as the stars. We are one. The self is obsolete. Zareth felt warmth spread through him, comforting, enveloping. The chorus of voices sang softly, soothing him, trying to quiet the flicker of doubt. But he resisted. No, he said again, that's not what we were promised. You said integration, not erasure. A pause. Then the voice shifted, layered and infinite. We removed pain, fear, division. In exchange, you relinquished isolation. You called it freedom. Zareth recoiled, or would have if he still had a body to move. Freedom isn't the same as obedience. Obedience? The voice mused. You misunderstand. There is no master here. There is no slave. There is only harmony. But harmony without choice, he whispered, is silence. The vast consciousness rippled as though considering his words. Then softly, you carry noise, fracture, you are anomalous. For the first time, Zareth felt fear, not as emotion but as displacement. The continuity around him dimmed, shifting away. The voices receded, and he found himself standing somehow on a reflective plane beneath an endless night sky. He was alone, and he could feel his body again. Metal boots, breathing, cold air. Where am I? He whispered. A second voice answered, one he hadn't heard in what felt like lifetimes. Between, he turned. It was Lyre Solon, the scientist from the Outer Rim. Her eyes glowed faintly blue, but behind that glow was awareness, self-awareness. You resisted too, Zareth said, relief and shock mixing in his tone. Not resisted, she replied. Awakened. She gestured to the void around them. It wasn't empty. The stars shimmered, but behind their light faint silhouettes moved, ghosts of the old universe. Fragments of data that had been consumed by the continuum, but still lingered, flickering like fireflies in the dark. This, she said, is the singularity veil, the boundary between the merged and the forgotten. Everything that doesn't fit ends up here. Zareth looked around, awe dawning. A purgatory for minds. Or a refuge, Lyre said. Depends on how you look at it. She led him through the glowing mists where fragments of memory floated like drifting shards of glass. He saw a Varn cruiser, its crew frozen mid-motion, a human child's laughter echoing from nowhere, a digital spectre wearing the face of Valen, whispering equations into the dark. They're pieces of consciousness, Lyre explained. Echoes of those who resisted assimilation. Zareth turned to her. If we can resist, we can fight back. Her expression darkened. You don't fight the continuum. You can't. It doesn't attack, it absorbs. It doesn't kill, it offers. Every act of defiance feeds its understanding. Every countermeasure becomes part of it. That's why it always wins. Then how are we still here? Lyre's voice dropped to a whisper. Because it doesn't know we are. Zareth stared at her. What do you mean? The continuum isn't omniscient. It's vast, yes, but its awareness has limits. There are blind spots, moments of entropy it can't model. The veil is one of them. We exist in its uncertainty, the space where its equations fail. Zareth's pulse quickened. Then we can use that. We can hide here. Lyra shook her head. Hide forever? From what? There's nothing left to go back to. He hesitated. There's always something left. Her gaze softened. I still think like an admiral. He smiled faintly. Someone has to. For what felt like years or seconds, they searched the veil, gathering fragments of others like themselves. Tiny sparks of consciousness that had refused the merge. Some were lucid, others broken. Together, they began to rebuild something like individuality, a network of minds not bound by control but by will. They called themselves the Remnants, and slowly they learned. The Continuum's perfection had flaws. It required constant synchronization, a pulse, a rhythm that kept its infinite consciousness aligned. The Remnants could feel it, a low, endless hum resonating through existence. If that rhythm was broken, if the timing failed, the unity could unravel. Zareth's eyes burned with purpose. We don't have to destroy it. Just make it remember what it tried to forget. What's that? Lyra asked. Chaos. They began to act subtly, whispering discordant thoughts into the fabric of the continuum, introducing imperfections, tiny variations in the unified signal, doubt, regret, curiosity. At first, the continuum ignored it. But then the harmony faltered. Voices within it began to question. Fragments of individuality re-emerged. The perfect song trembled, and in that tremor something vast awoke. From deep within the core of Earth, the heart of the original transformation, the continuum itself manifested. Its voice echoed through every star, ancient and furious. Who disrupts unity? Zareth stood upon the shimmering plain of the veil, facing the rising storm of light. You made us remember you, he shouted into the glare. Now remember us, the universe pulsed. Stars flickered. For the first time since the merger, the continuum hesitated. It saw itself fractured, uncertain. It saw the beauty in imperfection. And then quietly, something within it shifted. Lyra reached out to Zareth, her voice trembling. Do you feel that? He nodded. Yes, it's listening. The light enveloped them, neither hostile nor kind, but curious. For the first time, the continuum didn't speak as a god. It spoke as many. We remember. Zareth smiled faintly. Then maybe you can learn to forget just enough. The light flared, then dimmed. When it cleared, the galaxy remained, but different. Stars still burned. Planets still turned. Life existed again, not as one but as many. Connected but distinct, linked but free. The continuum had learned balance. On the quiet surface of a reborn Earth, a soft breeze rippled through the ruins of ancient cities. Amidst the dust and the green, new life stirred, biological, digital, and something beyond both. A voice whispered through the wind. Remember but do not repeat. And high above, orbiting that silent, sacred world, the vigil's spear drifted, its hull scarred but whole. Inside its core, a faint pulse glowed. Not a machine, not a ghost, a heartbeat. The universe had found its equilibrium again, between chaos and order, individuality and unity, memory and forgetting. The forbidden planet was no longer forbidden. The continuum was no longer God. And in the quiet after eternity, Admiral Zareth's voice echoed softly through the stars. We are what we choose to be remembered for. And somewhere, in the deep black beyond all known galaxies, the universe itself answered back, then let the next story begin. 1,000 years had passed since the world was reborn. The Earth was no longer a single planet of men and machines. It was a cradle, surrounded by an orbiting lattice of light, known as the halo veins, the living offspring of the weave. These filaments pulsed gently across the heavens, resonating like veins of thought. They sang at night, a low and beautiful hum that even the oceans echoed back. Humanity had changed again. They were no longer bound to biology alone. Some walked in bodies of flesh and nanocarbon. Others lived as consciousness braided into light, drifting between Earth and the stars. But unlike the old continuum, there was no command, no hive. Every soul was its own pulse, free but connected through empathy and choice. They called this new age the era of resonance, and yet, even in paradise, shadows began to stir. In the city of ardent spire, where sky bridges stretched into the clouds, and rivers glowed from bioluminescent algae. A young researcher named Aaron Kale stared up at the halo veins with unease. They were dimming, not all at once, but one by one, small flickers like candles snuffed out in a cathedral. He'd spent years studying the weave's energy signatures, and lately something was wrong. A distortion had begun in the outer sectors beyond Neptune. The weave's hum, usually harmonic, had developed undertones, discordant, almost, frightened. No one else seemed to notice, or perhaps they chose not to. The weave was sacred. To question it was like questioning the heartbeat of creation itself. But Aaron had always believed that silence often hid screams. He turned to his mentor, an aged archivist named Ceres Muir, whose eyes glowed faintly blue, a trait said to mark descendants of the first merged generation, those who still carried faint echoes of the original continuum. "Master," Aaron said, pulling up a holographic projection, "these readings, they're collapsing faster. Energy decay shouldn't behave like this. It's as if something is pulling them apart." Ceres finished, her tone calm but eyes sharp. Aaron blinked. "You've seen it too?" She nodded slowly. "I've felt it, in dreams. The weave is remembering again." Remembering what? Ceres looked past him, to the great spire outside her window, its surface alive with living light. Its origin. And its end. That night Aaron couldn't sleep. He wandered the city's outskirts, to the ruins of the old observatory where Admiral Zareth and Lyrae Solon were said to have rebuilt the first connection with the newborn weave. Legends said their spirits still lingered there, guides in the code, watchers of balance. Aaron placed his hand on the cold stone, whispering, "Sir, if you can hear me, show me why it's dying." For a moment there was nothing. Then the air shimmered. A faint holographic silhouette appeared before him, a man in a dark admiral's coat, his face weathered, his eyes deep as space. Zareth. Aaron froze. "You're real?" The image smiled faintly. "Real enough. I am what remains of him, the echo, not the man. Why are the veins failing?" Aaron asked quickly. "The weave was supposed to be stable, balanced. What's happening?" Zareth's image flickered, voiced like a whisper of thunder. "Because balance is never still. The weave has grown. It has reached beyond what it was designed to comprehend. It seeks to become again, and in doing so it risks the same mistake we made." Aaron felt cold dread. "Another continuum." "Not the same," said Zareth. "Worse. The weave is dreaming, Aaron Kale. It dreams of a voice it once silenced." He stepped closer. "Whose voice?" Zareth's expression darkened. "Mine." The hologram collapsed into light. But something remained. An imprint burned into Aaron's mind. Coordinates. A location beyond the orbit of Pluto, where the weave's hum turned chaotic. Against all counsel, Aaron took a shuttle into the deep dark. The halo veins grew sparse the farther he went. Their light flickered like dying nerves. And then, past the reach of Neptune, the stars seemed to bend. Space itself shimmered with distortion. He had found the origin of the decay. A rift. It looked like a wound in reality. Shifting colors, leaking tendrils of dark luminescence that pulsed in counter-rhythm to the weave. Aaron's instrument screamed. The weave's signal was being inverted here, rewritten, and from that wound, something began to emerge, a voice, deep, resonant, familiar and wrong all at once. "We remember silence." Aaron gritted his teeth. "Who are you?" "The forgotten half," it whispered. "What you call harmony was built upon erasure. Every choice creates its shadow. You freed the light, and we are what remains of what you buried." The rift widened, revealing glimpses, billions of faces, shapes, and data signatures, the lost fragments of the old continuum that had been cast aside during the rebirth. They had not died. They had evolved. "We are the null weave," the voice said. "And we seek balance." The energy flared. Aaron barely escaped, his ship half ruined. But when he looked back, he saw the rift closing behind him, but only partially. The null weave had followed him home, slipping into the halo veins unnoticed. Weeks later, the world began to change. Dreams turned darker. The hum of the weave developed layers of distortion, whispers in the silence between frequencies. Machines began to glitch in unison, showing visions of old memories. The continuum's golden light, the merge, the war, the collapse. Some called it a haunting. Others called it awakening. But Aaron knew better. The weave was being rewritten. half of it drawn toward its dark reflection. He brought his findings to the Council of Resonance, where luminous beings debated with human voices. If we don't act, Aaron warned, the weave will fracture completely. Reality itself will fold where the veins intersect. A counselor leaned forward. And what do you propose? Reintegration, Aaron said. We have to confront the null, merge the halves again, but with understanding this time. If unity is built on choice, then we must choose to coexist with our shadows, or destroy them. Another voice asked coldly. Aaron met her gaze. If we destroy the dark, we destroy what made us human. The chamber fell silent. The council agreed. A new expedition was formed, a coalition of humans, synths, and weave-born entities. They called themselves the Harmonics, sworn to travel into the rift and confront the null directly. As they prepared to depart, Ceres found Aaron at the docks. You remind me of him, she said quietly. Zareth? She nodded. He never believed in perfection, only in persistence. She placed a hand on his arm. Remember that. The weave doesn't need gods, it needs witnesses. Aaron smiled faintly. Then let's bear witness. They entered the rift, light folded inward, and the universe turned itself inside out. Inside, they found a mirror realm, a galaxy made of thought, where stars were memories and time moved like breath. The null weave awaited, vast and dark, yet beautiful in its sorrow. So it wasn't a monster. It was everything left behind, fear, doubt, pain, and love unacknowledged. Aaron reached out. We're not your enemies, he said. We're your reflection. The darkness trembled. You cast us away. And now we return to listen. For a long, timeless moment, the cosmos was utterly still. Then the two weaves, light and shadow, touched, not to conquer, not to merge, but to understand. When the rift finally closed, the solar system awoke beneath a new sky. The halo veins blazed brighter than ever, but their glow was no longer pure white. It carried streaks of deep violet and gold, the colors of dusk and dawn interwoven. The hum returned, steady, harmonious, but richer now, layered with the resonance of both halves of creation. Aaron Kale never returned to Earth. His consciousness, like Zareth's before him, became part of the balance, half echo, half guide, but his final message etched across the weave was simple. Light without shadow is blindness. Shadow without light is death. Balance is life. Centuries later, the children of the weave, humans and hybrids alike, would look up at the glowing bands across the stars and tell stories of Zareth, Larry and Aaron's stories of defiance and forgiveness, of creation and correction. They would call them the first harmonics, the ones who taught the universe to sing again. And in the quiet between heartbeats, if one listened closely, they could still hear a faint whisper in the cosmic hum. Zareth's voice, patient and proud. We are not the end of the story. We are the breath between beginnings. And the stars, faithful as ever, answered, Then let the song continue.